Hello, everybody. I welcome you all to the yet another LinkedIn live show. I guess we are live on air. That's what we were hoping for. And I checked on LinkedIn. Looks like it's running real smooth, but we need your support. Let us know in the comments if you are watching us or if you see the notification from us. Let us know in the comments that you guys are watching, and we really need your support. So without further ado, today is a very special day because I have one and only Shaunda Zilich here. I met with her at Talent Brand Summit. Again, shout out to Brian Cheney and Will Smith for hosting that wonderful conference and bringing all the employer branding experts under one roof. So that was really a memorable event for me personally. And for me to get to know the kind and polite and wonderful Shaunda out there. So, Shaunda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And I totally agree. That conference was amazing and very memorable and great to make connections. And thanks for doing this live LinkedIn efforts that you do. I mean, I love bringing the community together and having different ways that we can talk about issues that are coming up in employment brand.
Sure, thank you so much. And the profession is still evolving, so there is no other way for us to learn, right? In terms of some of the challenges, how do we tackle some of the issues, and what are some of the best practices. So I really thought, okay, I should use this LinkedIn Live platform to actually connect with, leaders like you. So again, thank you so much for being here with me today. I know it's a busy schedule for you and for taking out or carving out that 30 minutes with all of us. It's really thankful for.
Happy to be here. I love it. And you're right. It's the conversation we got to keep on going because it's definitely evolving every day.
Awesome. So, Shaunda, let our audience know. I know I'm connected with a few folks out there, and you are, connected with a few folks on LinkedIn. Chances are, we might not have mutual connections, right? So, for those who doesn't know of who you are as a person, please give a little bit, brief idea about who you are, what's your background, and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I started into this whole journey of employment brand about, I guess, like 9 years ago. That seems so long. With a company, actually with General Electric. And my background was not in HR or recruiting. It was completely in the marketing side of things. I basically looked at the opportunity to sell experiences and jobs, I guess, as a little bit. I kind of thought it was a lot more meaningful than even selling products and services on the marketing side of things. So applying that marketing knowledge and stepping into the recruiting world, we realized really quickly at GE that it was so much bigger than just having jobs on social media. And so we journeyed into this journey of employment brand, a global employment brand for General Electric at that time. And just for sheer numbers, I think it's always helpful. General Electric had at that time 350,000 employees, hiring about 80,000 a year around the world, and in 181 countries, which is a whole journey in itself of making sure we've got something that's global but also local. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, really was able to kind of set the stage and establish the employment brand for GE. I was learning a lot. Obviously, GE has had some rough times in the recent past, and honestly learned a whole lot more during the rough times than the good times. I think when your brand is a little bit under attack, that's when you really have to get creative and really think outside of the box. So it was appealing to me, but I got a call one day from this company called Qualtrics, and I'd never heard of it, but they explained about this platform that was helping experience management, and it was helping companies drive decision and actions through experience management. So things like employee experience, customer experience, brand experience, and product experience. And I really started thinking about it, and I thought, well, wait a minute, that's what we're all trying to do with candidate experience, is we're trying to use that data and use the brand and use the storytelling to drive in the right candidates or the quality employees and help them find their fit. So we started checking into it, and here a year and a half later, I'm at Qualtrics. Actually, I've been here about a year and a half, and really enjoying the journey here. And I guess a little bit about Qualtrics is When I started a year and a half ago, we were at about 1,400 employees. We hit 3,000 employees globally a couple weeks ago, and it's a well-known public goal that we plan to hit 8,000 employees by 2023. So a pretty fast growth company, not pretty fast, like a fast growth company, and in the high tech space, so a little bit different side of my brain to exercise. We were acquired by SAP at the beginning of this year, but it's been a wonderful journey. Honestly, I was very skeptical by the whole big company thing again, but it's been really, really neat to see the impact that the two companies can have together in representing what we call O data and X data.
So this is great. I was reading the blog that you posted on LinkedIn, the transition of you coming from 300K employees and then moving down to 1,500 employees, right? Where you had no clue what's going to happen. This is, still a new company, still a small company, yet it is in the tech industry, so competitive in terms of attracting talent. And within that 1.5 years or 2 years, you figured it out with the help of your leadership team for sure. So tell our audience in terms of how was that journey for you to kind of kick off, get the buy-in from your leadership team? Because I remember at the very beginning when you talked at Talent Brand, where you had some challenges, right? And you kind of showed the metrics and you showed the momentum and what the impact that can be done. So to our audience, and for those who are struggling to get that buy-in from the leadership team, tell us a little bit more about how was that journey for you?
Sure. And, I've talked to a number of people lately where I feel like there's still a lot of companies out there that are saying, hey, we want to venture into this employment brand, but it's almost like overwhelming. I don't know where to start, right? And so I think if I can organize it in 3 buckets, basically, and then talk a little bit about how that was able to make an impact, that might help and hopefully won't be as overwhelming, because I think we're all overwhelmed with this at times for sure. So when I got here, just to kind of set the stage, there really wasn't anybody in recruiting that wasn't a full-time recruiter. And the company brand itself, or like company marketing, really and probably still looks at our product marketing as the way of marketing, right? And very sales driven, very lead gen driven, and that type of marketing. So there was a few different understandings going on. But I think the way to kind of start into it, even for those companies out there, listening and really a little overwhelmed with the journey, is I kind of look at it like basically what are we going to have as far as content? And if I can have that bucket and a plan for that, the second one is, where is that content going to go? Where is it going to be online? And then the third one is the how. How are we going to get that content out there? How are we going to entice and pull people in? So if you go back to the what, you'll notice we have a Qualtrics Life blog. And I think you said, it's successful and all this, obviously still a lot of work to be done. But the Qualtrics Life blog has been a huge impact because it definitely covers the what bucket. It creates content. It creates that library that we're able to share. We'll cover a little bit more of how we got to the what when we get to how. But basically, it's employee stories. We now have over 300 employee stories on there we call them their why Qualtrics stories. Why do I do what I do? And it's 10 questions that we kind of throw their way. They can pick 2 to 5 that resonate with them. Welcome to share those 10 questions. I think it's a great place to start, and we get some really good stories out of that. But it helps to show what it's like to be a part of our company through the eyes of our employees. We all are looking for that transparency, to build trust, to entice people in. So we've built up that library. The second bucket is that where. So where are we going to be? And so we set out with, the Qualtrics Life handles on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, joining with our marketing team on the LinkedIn company page and what that looks like and what that cadence looks like. Obviously having an impact on, the website and that sort of thing. I think also with the where is just thinking about where can we be present that isn't about jobs. I know a lot of us love those career fairs and it's really been kind of part of our history in recruiting, but there's lots of other places to be present where you're active in places where people care about. So I'll talk a little bit to getting that buy-in and just an example of the where. There's an event here in Salt Lake called Love Loud. Imagine Dragons puts it on. It's just this amazing concert, but the impact of it is really to showcase that we love everybody for who everybody is, and really helping people become that. There's a rather large rate of teenage suicide in Utah, and this is to really address that, to love everybody for who they are. Imagine Dragons does it. They stream it online, millions of viewers from around the world. We didn't go with the idea of like, we're going to be present and talk about Qualtrics. We just had, I think we were a sponsor, but it wasn't really like, we were never on stage. Our name was never up in front of anything, but we had it. We wanted to offer tickets for all our employees. Our CEO is very passionate about causes like this. And so we offered tickets for all our employees. We had shirts that we wore. We had bracelets that we wore that had Qualtrics Life on them. And in that alone, and that was like within my first 2 months of working here, with just being present at that event and talking about it online, and again having the what and the where, and being present at that event, we saw a 300% increase in website traffic and a 300% increase in applications just that weekend that Love Loud was held. And we were able to show those numbers through Google Analytics pretty easily, pretty free, right? To Google Analytics. And I ended up walking into what we call our team, which is our CEO's, all his reports that meet with him every week. I ended up walking into that meeting just a few weeks on the job and showing these charts in front of them. And they were all like, okay, go do this. You know, like it was a really cool way to just create that buy-in, but to really showcase that, like, it's not always about the job, right? It's actually about attracting the right person that has that cause and that buy-in to what you do as a company, and then helping them find their fit. And that's maybe a little bit further down the road. So again, going back to the 3 buckets, it's the what, the content, the where, you know, online, where are we present? What events can we be present at? And the third one is the how. And that kind of even loops back into the what. It creates the what. So that the how, and I think if you've heard anything from me before, I'm pretty passionate about creating a brand ambassador army out of your employees. You know, we can speak all day long about our companies and preach out there about what our companies are, what we represent. We love diversity, right? Like all those silly things, but that really doesn't mean anything to anyone. And it really isn't trusted if you think about it. You know, I use the example of I'm a runner, and in order to buy running shoes, I don't go to like Brooks's website and read about the new model of running shoes they're going to put out, right? Like I go to a runner's forum and I read about, you know, problems that runners have with their feet, the same problems I have, and are these shoes going to solve that? You know, I want somebody that's been there, done that. And so when we create this brand ambassador army, which we basically do this 45-minute training, we spend a little bit about the basics of social media, but a big chunk of that training is talking about your why and your story. And what it does is it creates content. It creates not only those blog stories out on Qualtrics Life, but it also creates a plan that people walk away with of how to be involved in our Qualtrics Life handles, hashtag Qualtrics Life, capturing those moments around the world, again, from our employees' eyes. So again, it's the what, the where, the how, being able to show, you know, through those things, the impact that it has. And then the last thing I'll leave you with on just the buy-in from our company, we've recently been able to show that when we publish stories about our employees, it actually impacts the company brand as a whole. We can show that people, customers or customer prospects are requesting demo accounts after reading an employee story. They're, you know, requesting logins. They're requesting a call from sales. And I just think in order to create that buy-in, what we do is we really honestly become the consumer brand of our companies. And so it not only is how do I get a job there, but how do I interact with this company? And it actually has that impact on a company brand as a whole.
True. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, you know, what, where, and how. And it's kind of what I would say is that you put everything in one circle, right? I mean, we cannot say that this employer branding is just one standalone thing that's kind of separate with the whole brand. It's just one brand. And you proved it with the way of you have written those blogs and having the consumers coming back to actually buy the product. And And I agree. Among the consumers, we have candidates too, and among the candidates, we have consumers too. So we cannot, ignore one fact or the other. So I'm just going on to our LinkedIn live stream. We have a lot of audience, and how the platform works is I cannot show off all the comments on the live stream. So, but I can see. And thank you so much to Manoj Bhatnagar from India, Bobby Sharp, John Graham, and John commented a strategy, or commented on our LinkedIn Live, and asking a question as well. I'm going to read out the comment to you because you're not able to see right now. I love that you have addressed the fact that it's not just about where you show up, but more importantly, how your brand shows up. And it's to the point that, let's say, for example, a candidate, if they are gonna looking to work with an organization, this matters in terms of, are you just about your product, are you just about numbers, or do you stand do you stand for a cause, or what do you stand for, and is that even meaningful, and can they connect with you on a person to person basis? So that's what you guys have done by being at that event. And I believe, more and more corporates should do this, keeping the fact that this is humanity, right? This is about helping people and being there with them, letting them know that, yeah, we are here to support you.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's one thing that why I love those why Qualtrics stories is because sometimes it's about the day job that I do, right? When an employee writes it, sometimes it's about what they do every day. But probably, I don't know, I haven't really looked at it recently, but probably more than 80% of the time, my why and why I do what I do every day has a bigger story, right? Whether it's, I like the thing my company is accomplishing or the impact that my company has on the world, and I want to be a part of that story. Or it's even, bigger than that. I know for myself, I relocated my family here to Utah, and it's a much bigger story than just this company, and we always say that Qualtrics was just the vehicle that got us here, right? But I think that's the thing that we have to recognize with our employees is cause and impact, that they want to have on life. Honestly, is their job is just part of it. The company is just part of it. There's a whole integration of work life that actually happens with some of those stories, and I think that's what makes us real, right? Like you said, it's what makes us human and have emotions and be able to be driven by those emotions. One of the things that Qualtrics did that I thought was pretty cool, and honestly, one of the things that made me look twice when they said, "Oh, you have to relocate to Utah," and I thought, no, was the fact that Qualtrics is a sponsor of the Utah Jazz. So lots of different companies sponsor an NBA team here in the United States. And GE, the company I was with, was the first one. They sponsored the Boston Celtics, and they put their logo right on the shoulder of the Boston Celtics. Instead of Qualtrics using that opportunity to actually advertise their brand on the shoulder of those jerseys, they actually chose our nonprofit side of Qualtrics called Five for the Fight. So this is our nonprofit side. We say it's our DNA of Qualtrics. Ryan, our CEO, actually started this company when he came home to be with his father, who was diagnosed with cancer. And our Five for the Fight patch has, I don't know the exact how much we've raised so far, but the goal isn't just to research cancer, it's to eradicate cancer. And through the Five for the Fight, we've actually been hiring researchers all over the world that have been working on this. And it's really neat because we get to hear those updates as employees. And I guess I just say that because, to your point, it's a bigger thing than just my day job, right? It's what our company is actually representing. And I think one other with that comment that was made is, for me, we are in this really exciting era right now in candidate experience and employment brand, where we're starting to actually use data and storytelling of what resonates with people. And we're able to start to be proactive on the employee journey. So even thinking about, Love Loud and that event is just the one example we're starting to use here in this conversation. Being able to kind of look at that and say, okay, if if that resonated with somebody, and that's when they came to our website, they read these why Qualtrics stories. Maybe they read one of our senior engineer here, who's a female, Jamie Morningstar is her name, and she just has a fantastic story out there. Maybe we know that they read their blog because we can see that on the website traffic, and then they came and they applied to a job. We already have so much information on this person of what their cause is, what resonates with them, what attracted them. And so what we need to do is start to use that data into the employee experience and be proactive when they come in day one. Maybe there's a note on their desk from Jamie Morningstar. Mm-hmm. Maybe next year when we go to Love Loud, we're really, this person gets a VIP pass, I think sometimes we forget the idea that through the candidate experience and through the employment brand and what resonated with people, we forget that we already have a whole lot of data and a whole lot of information that we can apply to engage these employees into their employee life cycle.
True. And now it's a matter of how do we figure out what is that connecting factor that we can do to kind of make it work, right? I mean, we have all this data right in front of us, and if you are not able to make that strategy, if you're not able to figure out, okay, where is that dots getting connected and how do I make I would say informed decisions in the future, that's what it takes for success. John is asking a question right along with this path is, how are you measuring the impact of your content strategy all the way to hire?
Yeah, great question. There's obviously the normal funnel we think of. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we'll kind of walk through that funnel. So there's first the engagement, there's first the reach. How much reach are we getting with all of this content? How many people is it hitting? Then there is the engagement, right? So then we're looking at engagement by how many clicks, how many likes, how many people have interacted with that brand, with those postings. Mm-hmm. And then the bottom of the funnel right there is the application. So how many applications have we gotten? Mm-hmm. And I'll go a little bit on quality versus quantity in a second, but just for sheer purposes, and again, those just starting into the journey, we were able to say that we now, going from probably not that many reach because we were just going one-to-one, contacting one person to apply to a job. We now reach over 2 million a month just through our social channels. No money into that, so no social advertising. I really believe in organic, and that's where we engage with people best. Mm-hmm. We also are seeing engagement levels of basically through the roof. Nicole Parrish has joined our team here as our attraction awareness lead, and she's 300% year over year as far as engagement levels on some of those social channels. It's insane. And then applications. So we've gone from about 4,000 applications a month to over 16,000 applications a month in just a year's span. So that's great, and those are good numbers. But hopefully we have some recruiters on the line that are going, yeah, right. I don't want to go through that many applications, right? and so then we've got to start talking about quality. Mm-hmm. We've got the quantity coming in. We've got the people that are being attracted to us. Then we've got to start talking about quality. And here's where I think, honestly, we're still on this journey here at Qualtrics of how do we start to, I don't want to say stack rank because that sounds unhuman, but how do we start to realize where the good quality employees are coming from? So then it's joining those employee experience and the employee engagement scores and performance scores, right? Being able to say, here, these employees stay with us the longest, these employees, perform the best. And then funneling back through and say, we got those applicants from this source and they interacted in that way. Again, still maneuvering that journey here, but really starting to get those data points down to be able to see backwards and to show the ROI on that. And then I think, to John, beyond that, the ROI is just on the company brand as a whole. We have, luckily, our marketing department here is amazing and they're great to work with. And we're able to really partner with them on how is this impacting our customers and how are our customers impacting our employees. Mm-hmm. Again, that's kind of our deal here is experience management and how those experiences interact.
Which is great to have that support from marketing and communications, right? Where you have that cross functional collaboration. And we have a question right on that from Courtney Vasquez. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Courtney. Outside of talent acquisition, who is your best cross collaborative partner for EB?
Yeah. So one thing to know is here at Qualtrics, we actually pulled out employment brand from recruiting, and I report directly into our VP of People Ops. For lack of better purposes, he's our CHRO. We don't have like proper HR here. So I report directly into him, and I'm actually on a team that is made up of internal communications, talent brand, and our employee experience. So very much intertwined with that team, and how does this all work together? And then obviously connecting into recruiting, because it all comes in that way. Also included in that, I would also, want to just call out that also plays a part into internal mobility, right? We constantly sell growth and development to our candidates as they're coming in, but then how are we connecting to that story down the road? So it's kind of neat for me because I think I have it into about 7 different stages that are all a part of the same thing, the full employee life cycle. So awareness, hiring, I'll probably forget one if I'm trying to label them off, but all the way through to alumni and advocate, right? After somebody leaves our company, or maybe they don't accept a job or have a job with our company to begin with. So there's 7 different stages that all connects into. And then those other stakeholders, like we've already mentioned, a great relationship with marketing and communications and creative, as well as even our executive team, right? So plugging directly into our VP of People Ops, I think is honestly truly important. I don't think all companies are there to right to that point in the journey yet. I think employment brand has to start under recruiting because they believe in it and they have direct impact from what happens from it. But once you can move it out from that and actually report directly into that executive team, it really helps to be able to paint the picture across a number of different functions in the company.
True.
I do know we're kind of getting up on time, but I have plenty of time today. I am so excited for this effort. So and if you can't tell, I'm a little bit passionate, and I could probably talk about this all day.
Thank you so much. I was like, where did that 30 minutes go? I didn't get enough, questions that I wanted to ask, and there was and this 30 minutes just went by. But thank you so much again, for staying a little bit more minute further. So my question to you personally, you said that 300 employee stories and all this impact that you're getting and metrics that you're getting. Tell our audience a little bit to that behind the scene of how do you, to that nitty gritty, if you will. How do you solicit and how do you reach out to employees? How do you get that information? And what's that work goes through, getting this 300 stories out there?
Yeah. And it's a journey. And I think the first question on a lot of people's mind when we start into getting employee stories is, oh my gosh, my legal team's never going to let me do that, or my marketing team's never going to, right? And it has been a journey. The first one I published, I'll never forget, here at Qualtrics, I went on vacation right afterwards, and this whole conversation happened, and it's like, oh, maybe we should pull it down. We can't pull it down. We already pushed it out, so yeah, I learned a few things. One of the things is just kind of getting down into the weeds of it is we really don't solicit for stories. I think a lot of people start asking, who do I go to get their story? What I try to do is have this brand ambassador training. I offer it live, a couple times a quarter. And I include our employees, our current employees, but here, because we're growing so fast, one of the things I always do is reach back out to those people that joined the company the quarter before. So kind of letting them get into the mode, not be overwhelmed, but it's a great time to grab them and say, hey, would love to have your story. Would love for you to be a brand ambassador. They're generally starting to get excited and going, hey, I want to go back to my campus, or I want to go back to my, friend about this. And so it's a great time to grab them. They're not as overwhelmed, 90 days into the job or thereafter. And so I'll usually email them and say, hey, we're having these brand ambassador trainings, and give them the choice of if this is something they want to do. I think the cool part about it here is to get those 3, we are overwhelmed with stories, which said no one ever, right? I haven't checked with Nicole lately, but I know talking to her a couple of weeks ago, she was saying, hey, Shaunda, I'm already scheduled into January. We have so many stories coming out of our employees. And I think once that culture takes on, and once people start realizing, I can be a brand ambassador, I can, this is the way to participate, it becomes part of your culture, right? We don't say this is what the culture is going to be, but it's one of those things that organically starts happening. So it encourages more and more people to get involved. What we do here is we get, like I said, we have a survey, or a Qualtrics survey that actually goes to the employees. It has 10 questions on it. Like I mentioned before, welcome to share those. And we encourage people to pick 2 or 3 that resonate with them. And it can be things like, I relocated to Utah. What was that like? One of my favorite ones is what shocked you most about working at Qualtrics? And I think people love that one because that's what we're all wondering when we're looking at the job descriptions, right? That's what we're like, what are you not telling me, right?
Yeah.
So I think people love that question. We don't make them all about Qualtrics. One of them on there is, what's your top life hack? Again, we want people to look like people, not little Qualtrics robots running around. And so just asking those questions creates that culture. We get that story in, or those answers in, and it goes into WordPress. It's, again, simple. Everybody uses it. Our legal team does take a look at it just to make sure we're not talking about anything that is non-public. And we do have somebody in marketing that I call him the voice of the company. I don't really know what his name is, or what his title is. I know his name, but he's the voice of Qualtrics. And so Jack takes a look at him and just make sure we're representing the voice of Qualtrics. Generally, not a ton of stuff changes. We want this to be from the voice of the employee and to look like their story. Like if one of their best friends reads it, we don't want them to be like, oh, that was,
That's not
or whatever, right? Like we want it to represent them. And I think that approach has really paid off. And again, I think it creates that culture and creates that that understanding from people that this is something they want to be a part of.
Well, this is great because the thing is that, let's say, for example, that surprises and not knowing, those are things in the past. But right now, if I wanted to collaborate with somebody, or let's say, for example, if they wanted to work with you, they really need to know what's the work environment like, what's the people like, what's the culture like. And the people, I would say, from my perspective, you cannot just say that the culture is something that is not visible, but because it is visible and it's your people and they make the culture.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing all those stories of 300 and much more stories that is going to come, because it helps our candidates and the external folks to kind of know a little bit more about the inside views. So my last question would be, what are some of the metrics that you would recommend to people who wanting to work in employer branding, or recruiter working on employer branding should focus on?
Yeah, one other just tie back into the last story, and then it actually ties into metrics, is we have a lot of us, one of the biggest pain points out there right now, or one of the biggest things we're trying to solve, is D&I. How do we make somebody feel belonging to our company, right? And to me, and there's a number of different things that fall into that story. We won't get into the details, but to me, through those stories is a great way, whether it's belonging because diversity, or it's belonging because, man, I'm a mom that has kids and I got to move across the United States to Utah. And what's that like? There's so many things in those stories that we find commonalities that we're able to see ourselves in that situation, right? And so to me, it's a great way to connect even some of those pain points and even some of those initiatives, I guess, that we all have top of mind that we're working on in recruiting and in attracting talent. And I think along with that that's where it really showcases in the metrics. So if somebody's just stepping into the employment brand journey, what kind of metrics should they work on? Again, establishing that what, where, and how, those 3 buckets, is so important. And connecting in, like we already talked about, the reach, the engagement, the applications. And then I think the metrics beyond that are really, how do we continue this data into the employee journey lifecycle? How do we showcase that? How do we showcase that it's better for somebody to be attracted and enticed to our brand rather than us go knocking on the door and have to teach them all about Qualtrics? So if you think about that, then you bring in time to hire, right? You bring in acceptance rates. You bring in cost per hire. We were doing some some work the other day just on our metrics here to just look at different sources. And we were noticing that there's the same acceptance rate right now for at least the past couple of months. The past quarter is what we were looking at. The same acceptance rate for those just coming in through our website and applying to jobs and those being connected through LinkedIn. And I think that's a really interesting story. And we got to dive deeper into those metrics here soon. Because I think in our brains and the way we've treated recruiting for a long time is we've thought we have to go find the one. Where maybe we turn that a little bit and we say, hey, let's attract and entice in. And then from those attracted, enticed in, let's find the one that fits this right place. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're starting into it, you've got that reach, engagement, applications, and then thinking about that quality of applications or employees. And then as you continue further into that, how do those metrics impact some of these bigger goals that we have, D&I, obviously time to hire, cost per hire, and that sort of thing.
We do have a question regarding D&I. Can I ask you that question right now?
Sure.
Okay. It's from John. He's asking, how are you going about attracting diverse talent to Utah? So that's goes into line with what you have talked about.
Right. It really is. And I don't know if John's in Utah, but for those outside of Utah and even outside of the United States, it is a large topic here. And one of the things, and because of that, Qualtrics would never say we've been perfect at it, but we definitely are working on it. And, one of the ways that we're able to do that is really through those stories. One of the questions that we ask people if, this is part of what they want to make through their Why Qualtrics stories is how do you find community? Because let's remember, diversity and inclusion is all about diversity of thought. And we know that diversity of thought is what makes us better companies, right? And really just better people as a whole if we have diversity of thought in our relationships, right? So it's all about attracting that diversity of thought. So one of the questions is, how do you find community? And when we talk about stories like that, like I even said earlier, moving my family across America to Utah, I have a 10-year-old son. I'm sure everybody on the line that was a 10-year-old son at one point was just totally simple, but sometimes I don't understand my 10-year-old son. And being able to connect with Jess here is another woman here that moved across the country from New York City. In her story, she talks about her 10-year-old son. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's finding those things in common even through those stories. So I think that's, and forgive me, I forget the exact question, but I think that's one way to help with the diversity, especially even attracting diversity to Utah. And I would add to that, we have 25 offices around the world. There are different D&I things to think about at every single one of those offices, and like I said, at GE before, it being in 181 countries, there was a different story for every single country we were trying to attract talent to. And really, I heard somebody say the other day that, it's a global employment brand, but then we have to globalize. So, and I think that's really what we have to do, and figure out what are those initiatives in every place. But I think those employee stories and even beyond the stories, if you look at our Qualtrics Life Instagram account, right away, you're going to see the breadth and depth of our company, whether it's just the employees here in Utah and the breadth and depth of them and their jobs, or if it's in a number of our countries or offices around the world, letting employees actually showcase what it's like to be a part of our company. And I even say the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Hopefully nobody thinks they're a perfect company. We all have things to work on. So it's okay to showcase that through our employees.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all are living in a bubble, right? And it is always good to have a platform for us to kind of relate to somebody that feel like, okay, she gets me or he gets me. She has come from that same background. I can reach out to her. I can get some insights from her or some helpful thoughts maybe. So that's where I believe, these stories kind of resonate more and helpful. And from John's question of attracting the diverse talent, this platform helps in terms of, okay, these are employees who are coming from diverse background, and any person who's out there who can relate to this employee would be right then and there attracted to the company as well. So
And I think it's why we got to tell the stories even beyond employees, right? Like, I mean, honestly, I did not plan on being this pleasantly surprised by living in Utah. And I mean, I thought, oh, this looks adventurous. I can go hiking and skiing, but it is awesome. Like I'm always like, why does nobody talk about this? Like it's so amazing. And we can only tell that through some of those things like an Instagram post or a story, and even beyond the employee stories, but just what it's like to live somewhere. You mentioned something before that I just wanted to note. Job descriptions are a hot topic, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's, what do we do with job descriptions? And I think there's a day where maybe we don't exactly have a job description, but we have people's stories. And we say, oh, we're hiring an engineer in Seattle, right? And check out so-and-so's story of what his journey's been like being an engineer at Qualtrics in Seattle, and I think, I don't know, I just feel like there's more connection there than there is than we give credit. And I think it can help us in a long way of writing some of those job descriptions.
Do you guys use those employee stories in your, let's say, for example, this one so-called job posting right now?
Yeah, definitely. One is in the job description, we do a little picture of the person and a little bit about their story, and then say, click here for more information about what it's like to be them or a day in the life of. And then I would say even reverse is if we have somebody's story that's out there. I mentioned our leader, female engineer earlier, not the only one, but she has an amazing story. One of the things is we have an experience bonus here. We give all our employees $1,500 or the like amount every year to go spend on a bucket list item. And so what she does is she actually goes to an orphanage, and she wrote about that and just how amazing that was to be able to do that. On that story, we also want to link back, is this something that you want to be a part of? Is this how you want to experience your career? Check out some of the jobs we have available. So I definitely think you have to use it in both directions.
Well, great. Well, Shaunda, thank you so much. We are about to wrap up here, and a big shout out to all the folks who have joined us on LinkedIn Live. We have Rubish, Parmeshwaran, Vikash Kumar, and Bobby Sharp. Bobby has a long comment. He mentioned, love what you are sharing, Shaunda. I'm sitting here struggling with how to apply this to a much smaller team of 17 team members, but you are making it more clear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is it can apply to any company, any size, right? I always say, I feel like for a couple decades now, we've been in this situation of I have a job description, I post a job, people apply to the job, and I hire the best person that applies to the job. And I think times are changing. I think it's going to be more about enticing and pulling people into what we're doing as a company as a whole, and then helping them find their fit. So appreciate that, Bobby. And I hope that something can apply to any company that's out there, anybody listening.
True. Well, thank you so much, Shaunda, for joining with me today and sharing your wisdom with me and with my audience. One last question from Manoj. He's asking, where can I learn more about Qualtrics? Well, check out the hashtag Qualtrics Live. For sure, you'll be able to learn more about it. And Shaunda, what are some of the platforms that our audience should, go and check out in order to get to know more closer to Qualtrics?
Yeah. Like I said, we've got Qualtrics Life on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then we obviously have our company page on LinkedIn. And then, our website is Qualtrics.com. I'm a little bit biased to our Qualtrics Life blog, just because that's where a lot of those stories are. And I feel like that's where we wear our heart, right? And we showcase what we're about. And a good call out, though, just to say, man, Instagram, this might even be a subject for another LinkedIn Live sometime that you do, and maybe get, some of those gurus out there like Will or Brian or whoever to talk about it. But Instagram's really taking off as far as just showcasing our companies. And we see so much engagement on Instagram, and I think it's where people are present, but then they can just scroll down and just get a really good quick glance at what it's like. So I would also just mention Instagram as far as just being a really good quick glance to learn more about Qualtrics Life.
Awesome. Well, Shaunda, thank you so much again. I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And look forward to talking to you in real life sometime soon. And thank you again. You have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and happy holidays to everybody. It's such a great time of year.
I know. Happy holidays. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.